appreciate that.
Yeah, so this is people probably know from the title. We're gonna address some things off the cuff. If you saw last week's As Always podcast, James and I ended up without planning it in just some sort of like mental breakdown discussion.
It was an existential crisis, is what it was.
It was. It really was. But we got a lot of our feelings and thoughts out about what this year's been like on a personal level, on a professional level, in terms of YouTube and the 4 pillars and the community. And the 4 of us have, chatted over the week and have had, conversations and a serious conversation before this podcast, sort of discussing what we want to do going forward, what we want out of the community, and is this something we want to keep doing? The question has to be asked, and we had to ask ourselves that question.
Yes.
The answer is yes. We're here doing this podcast because we love this. We love each other. We love what we do. We love this community. And I don't think it was a hard decision for any of us to go, we've just got to figure this out. Quitting this isn't really an option. It's something you think about because we're struggling, but it's not really an option. We're here.
Yeah.
It's not possible to quit this now. We've put too many years into it, and we've put our blood, sweat, tears, and sacrificed our firstborns. So I think
a piece of my soul has been chipped off.
So we have to come together and talk about it and establish a way forward.
Yeah.
And we can't ever promise overnight that we'll have it all figured out, but we've definitely made a good stab at it in our conversation we had before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we have. Well, I mean, James, you've been up doing a lot more content and sort of change things up. Do you want to address first how you're feeling about it and where we stand going forward as well?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of where I'm at with myself, I think I've been struggling a bit with finding a place, and I think everyone knows that. And I think part of that comes from the fact that the 4 pillars have been a bit separated, which we've discussed. And I think my direction going forwards, for me, is just to be able to communicate with the community more. I think is my number one. Being able to have those big projects with smaller community-based things in between, like your wish list, quick fire, everything like that, to be able to communicate with everybody in a better way than I have been. And I think that's my number one, is being able to get that communication back down, being able to have that interaction with the community back. And I think that in turn really helps sort of breed this sort of feeling of family between the 4 pillars as a community. So that's sort of my goal for where I'm going with things.
Yeah.
Do you want me to say something else there?
I don't know. I didn't feel like
I'm going to be honest with you.
Say something else.
I was reading Twitter when you did that. Gaz replied to my tweet, and I was just reading it.
Dude, you were like literally in the middle of talking.
Yeah,
you just sort of stopped.
Yeah,
what it felt like.
Yeah. Sorry. What's happening?
What the fuck?
Social media does cable.
I thought I finished. What are we talking about?
Yeah, well, we were just literally, you were explaining your view on what we're doing and what you're doing going forward.
Yeah.
And then you sort of seemed like you just had stopped halfway through a sentence. It was more wasn't that you didn't finish a thought, it was that the way you were speaking, it was your tone of voice, it was like you were going on to another point, but you just sort of stopped.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to what I was saying. I'm done.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Fuck me. It's alright, I haven't been podcasting for 7 years. It's my first one.
It's fine. It's fine. George, how about you, man? How are you feeling about it all, and what are your sort of thoughts going forward?
I feel alright about it. I mean, like, I've come to terms recently with the fact that I'm not going to be doing YouTube as my job, and I think I'm fine with that. Like, I gave it a go over like the last year. I tried to make it work. I put a lot of effort into content, but I just don't have the self-motivation for it, or like the drive for it. But I still love making videos, and I think that's a sign to me that, you know, I should go out and get a job, stop being a fucking vagrant, and then and continue doing content creation in my own style, my own pace, because I love this community. I wouldn't be sane without it. I don't think people realise how much shit this community's got me through over the years, but like, I wouldn't be able to just let it go. So I'm happy to work on myself personally and continue to do content creation as a hobby, that's fine to me. It used to be like this horrible idea, like, oh, if I can't do it as a job, what the fuck am I gonna do? But like, it's not really that big of a deal. I can still continue doing it. It doesn't mean that I'm not good at content creation just because I don't make enough money from it to live off of. So that's my outlook on it. I'm gonna be more involved with the community. We're gonna set up some co-op gaming videos, whatnot, which I think will be really fun to make. And yeah, that's my stance on it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna be not doing it as a job. Which, I mean, to be honest, it's not like my upload schedule's been the most consistent over the last year anyway. So I doubt anything will change in terms of my channel at all. But we're gonna be adding a lot to the community. That's what I want. I want to add to the community and get everyone hyped again to be a part of it.
And that's big
me.
Community focus. Ethan, what about you, man? How are you feeling about it all, and anything you sort of wanted to address?
Well, I feel good about starting to understand this new direction for us after the conversation we've just had. And I mean, there have been times where I've been a little bit worried about what's going on, hoping that that we can figure it out. And part of it has been has been my responsibility in a way, because I know that I have been a little bit more absent than I would have liked to be so far this year, but couldn't be helped. I have tons of stuff that I need to get. I have tons of stuff that I needed to do, and my social life has definitely taken a huge turn, and obviously there's stuff going on in my life that I'd rather not address publicly, that I've got to get sorted as well. So I don't know. I think most of my issue came from being out of sync with you guys, because well, we've all had our own things to deal with. We've all had our own crises, if you will, this year, and they've all hit at the exact same time, which is fucking convenient. But it isn't helpful. But after that conversation, I know we're on the same page with getting everything back on track.
For sure, yeah.
And so I'm kind of optimistic about the four pillars going forward, because I know we won't have it sorted out overnight, and I know it can probably at times be a bumpy road, and it will be regardless. Content creation in general online tends to be a bumpy road every single year, but this year's been especially bumpy, and now we're finally getting the roadworks out, so we've got to fix it up. But it's going to take a while, and I'm happy to sit through that process. And just before we started, we came up with tons and tons of ideas for going forward and ways that we can re-establish the four pillars as a community and as content creators. So I don't have any concerns to add, if you will, at this point, because we've had that communication, which was my concern. Is where did that go? What's going on? Is everybody is everybody going through the same shit as me, or similar shit? Is that But no, now we've had that communication. I'm definitely a lot more optimistic for the coming months and years. So I don't think it's necessarily much to add on my part. I'm just sort of glad that we could have that conversation and figure out what we want to do next, and that we've all got ideas to bring it forward somehow. And that's all that matters to me, is making sure the community doesn't suffer because we're not necessarily on our A game this year at all. And that's enough for me for now. Yeah,
100%. And to explain to the community what we're talking about and what the direction is going forward. Obviously, we have directions as individuals because we're four individual content creators, but also we're a team. The four pillars are a team, and we lead a community of people and we've felt that it's drifted apart, and that's, like Ethan talked about, our own life stuff's gone on, our own sort of crisis have gone on, the communication has lacked, we've sort of felt a bit separate, and that's made the community feel separate. But a big part of it came from the last Assassin's Creed game that came out, Valhalla, the Ubisoft allegations over the last 18 months, and us drifting away. And what we decided on was, we're not going to support Ubisoft, but we're not going to talk about them. They have to get bleeped out of our fucking podcast, and we're going to ignore all our history. Any videos we've made on it, we're not talking about it. We're not talking about anything. And that's actually what we did. Was punished ourselves for what someone else has done or what others have done. And we've punished you guys for it too, and that's honestly, it's not fair. So a big part of what we've discussed is that none of us are going to play the next Assassin's Creed. None of us are going to buy any new Ubisoft games. That's not changing. We are not supporting this company. But we are going to be talking about them. If we think they've got a game coming out, like today, we're going to talk about Far Cry 6 and how shit it looks and the reviews that have come out. And we're going to discuss that. We're going to have a conversation about it because that's what we do. And
we talk about games. There's nothing wrong with it.
We've got to be able to talk about our history. The multiplayer battle James and I did years ago. What about when the Advent calendar comes? Are George and James and I going to do that hilarious Unity co-op video where I'm playing some fucking separate game for the 3rd year in a row? Like, people love that shit. And it's not about, oh, Unity's great. It's like making fun of Unity and also just being dickheads.
Yeah,
like,
it's to show us
we would not be allowed to
as
make
friends.
our own content that we make, you know, if we ignore it. What if, you know, someone wants to do a Revelations retrospective 10 years after, like the Ezio days, well, the games that we love, and I still love those games. I'm going to pretend I don't love them.
So do I. Yeah, I don't think
like
it's
we all
anything
do,
wrong to admit that.
And it just made us feel guilty and feel immoral because we're so disappointed, so let down by organization and a franchise that we were so connected to, that it just really let us down, not just in terms of the games end up being absolute utter trash. Those last 3 games have been fucking abysmal. But also the company that made them made us feel fucking bad, like we're bad people for even playing them.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we didn't do that. And I already own the games, you know what I mean? Like, so I can't talk about them. I can't replay the Ezio trilogy. These games I love. You're not going to catch me. I'm not going to fucking play Unity for fun or anything. But what if we make content on it? What if we do that, like I just said? So we've got to be able to do what we do. That's about us. You know what I mean? Like, we've got to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But we're not here to promote Ubisoft, and we're not here to support Ubisoft, and we're not here to give them any money. You're not going to hear us talking about the Season Pass DLCs that are coming in fucking Valhalla or Assassin's Creed Infinity or whatever the fuck it's supposed to be
what
called.
the fuck is that supposed to be?
Like, we're not going to be buying those, playing those, promoting those games. Will we talk shit about them? Maybe. You know, it's up to us. But that's what we do, and that is up to our discretion to do. But we're no longer going to ignore our history. We're here to focus on games, and we decided as a team, as the 4 pillars, what is our direction? Why are we here? You know, we're here to, you know, obviously be friends and talk shit. We're going to continue talking shit in this podcast. George has recommended. It's my favorite fucking shit ever. That's not stopping. You know what I mean? But we also have got to talk about what's going on. Big movies, big video games. And when these big video games come out, like you've got Halo Infinite coming out at the end of the year, then Horizon Forbidden West. As someone that hasn't been playing games really at all, I've committed with the boys, like, we want to share as a community in hype for big things. So when Halo Infinite comes out, we're all going to get around it. We're going to make some videos in it as individuals. We're going to talk about it on podcasts, and we're going to do a 4 pillars co-op thing. Then when Horizon Forbidden West comes out, you know, we're all going to get around the hype. We're all going to be a part of it. That's what we've committed to as being pillars, as being part of this community. That's what we're here to do. We're here to share in enjoyment and hype, and also address serious things or talk shit about things we don't like. If Halo Infinite turns out to be shit, we're going to be sitting here ripping on it, you know? Like, there's no doubt about it. But that's what we do. So we're getting back to ourselves, is what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. We're not actually really changing anything. We're getting back to being ourselves, but also we're not paying fucking Ubisoft a cent. We're not, you know, like,
still
ever
fuck
again, and
Ubisoft,
we're not being on their
but
side.
new.
We're not being a team with them. We're not talking to them. Fuck them. That's
Fuck
not
Ubisoft,
changing.
but in 4K. That is us now.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know,
we
I don't
can
know
talk
how
about
that fits,
games.
but it's just the way I can only describe it. Yeah, no, we can't
Pillars
ignore our
remastered.
history, and that's sort of the main thing. We can't ignore our history. We're no longer gonna censor Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed, or anything like that. Josh, you can still censor
Redacted.
company if you want.
Yeah, censor that. Definitely censor that. Yeah.
But I had to have them. But we can't censor things that exist that are part of our history in some way. Nor can we just completely alienate our viewer base on those, which is something that we have done to a degree. And I feel like the best way to go forward is to continue on the part of our stance that we don't want to give Ubisoft our money, we don't want to support Ubisoft, we don't want to endorse Ubisoft. And we've got to find a balance between that and also not alienating our history and punishing ourselves and our viewer base and everybody listening to this podcast and everybody in the Discord and everybody who almost relies on us for our opinions on these things every now and then. We can't necessarily alienate those. We can't promise that we won't alienate everybody, because that's just how content creation works. Sometimes viewers like it, and eventually it's like time to move on. The viewers go, this, it's time to move on from this. You know, it's a constantly moving machine on both ends. So we've just got to make sure that we're not moving the machine so much that everybody's no longer able to attach.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a good move going forward. It gives us a bit more of our history. We can talk about our history. We can communicate about it a bit more openly, and then also that reminds us here of why we do this in the first place, which is because we have this shared history, we have this common knowledge, and we have and we just have a laugh along the way, and it feels like a huge portion of that has been missing, and so that's what this is here to address and change.
Yeah. Like, it felt like whenever I'd make a joke about something related to Ubisoft slightly, it'd be like some taboo thing, and that felt really weird to me.
You've been sat there like, ooh.
Yeah, it's like, should I laugh or
Not
should
to
I
say
just
that.
be like, yeah. We
just
like
do
made
it.
this strange like rule where we limited
It was
ourselves.
unspoken. It was
and the
completely
community.
unspoken, but we did.
Yeah,
We did
yeah,
establish
it was-
a silly rule.
It was hasty. It was very hasty, and we all felt very strongly about it at the time. And I still do feel strongly about the Ubisoft situation, but obviously,
Yeah, we all do. Yeah.
it felt like the community that we love and know has been affected as a result of our hastiness. So we've decided to rethink it a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just
I
hope
just want to be
people
back
don't-
to being us
Yeah.
Yes.
without promoting Ubisoft ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with regards to, like I said this when we were talking before, but I think, you know, in doing what we did with regards to Ubisoft, we've removed ourselves from a place where we actually gave insightful commentaries on important things in the games industry, in terms of when you see Ubisoft doing these, not just, you know, what they do to their employees, but what they do to their games too, and what they do to the industry. I feel like that's another important thing,
something
because
worth talking about. You know,
because
like, we should talk about that. I've never had
Ubisoft
an
are
issue
harming
necessarily
the-
talking about it, but I mean, I rehashed my point on the gear packs issue for long enough, and I knew it wasn't going to change. And then I just thought, in doing this, am I inadvertently promoting Ubisoft and not even knowing it?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that sort of waved me off at the end there. However, going forward, I really don't mind talking about that stuff, and I don't think we should restrain ourselves if we feel we have something to say about it. Because yes, Ubisoft has done some sucky things in house to their own employees, and it's fucking horrible. And also, they're doing a not a very similar. They might as well be
Redacted.
the games industry. They're doing.
Fuck.
Okay. Fuck. They are. What they're doing is bastardizing it. They're bastardizing their games. They're bastardizing their own design philosophy, or lack thereof, to monetize it and to milk money out of people. And so that's a talking point we can't walk away from. We can't walk away from maybe talking on occasion about uninspired game design, or their games looking like the same thing over and over. Like the other night, they announced a battle royale, another one.
God.
Talk
Right?
about not having ideas and just going with the fucking mainstream flow. You know, and these are things that are worth talking about because it does affect the games industry.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think we had a space, and what we've done is our audience had overlap with a ton of other different creators that, you know, are talking about Ubisoft content, but not in the same way we were necessarily. In the same way, we were very critical. We were very we very much like to criticize Ubisoft's business practices, and I think in removing ourselves, all we've done is left the audience with other creators that aren't as critical as we were in that space. So now they're just exposed to people that are promoting this content, and as a result, what are we doing? Maybe we're actually ending up giving Ubisoft more money by removing ourselves, because people are going to be buying these games or buying these packs, whereas we might have been preventing that beforehand. So it's a complicated situation to me, and I just think that we had something interesting to say on a topic of discussion in the industry, and we've just removed ourselves from that to allow other people to take the spotlight, and other people to inform the masses. Sometimes informing them the opposite of what we might believe is correct. So it's I just think there's a place for us to discuss those things. They're important conversations to talk about, because as much as Ubisoft are harming their employees, they're also harming the industry, and they're also harming their player base, and they're also hurting a lot of consumers as well. And I think it's worth talking about that stuff too. Removing ourselves from that conversation is really not necessary at all, because it's not as if we're promoting them or saying anything they're doing is good. We're saying everything they're doing is bad, and we're just bringing a voice to that. So I think it's worth talking about that too, rather than censoring ourselves entirely from any positive or negative criticism of Ubisoft.
Yeah. I feel like that's the best way to go forward with that, and then in doing that we can also not alienate our history. Doesn't necessarily mean we always have to talk about the good old days of the big bad Ubisoft, because that's not necessarily what this means. What this means is we don't shy away from the good memories we might have had from playing these old games. We don't shy away from getting in the midst of a controversy that needs to be discussed on a level playing field, when other creators, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, maybe doing may have one perspective that we don't necessarily share, but we've got to be able to provide that perspective because somebody has to.
I also think we're within our right to.
I think at this point, I think it's a fair thing to do, and I mean, I've never been against talking about issues with Ubisoft's anti-consumer practices and anything like that, regardless of when it's been. But we have removed ourselves from these circles to the point where we will not know until about 3 months after the fact if they have. So in a way, we almost need to re-inject ourselves slightly. It's kind of one of the reasons why I never unfollowed everybody who. So I'm in those circles. I still follow a bunch of them on Twitter. I don't follow any of the bloody official Ubisoft pages that I'm aware of, and if I do, I'll have to unfollow those rapidly. Because I've been getting rid of those, but I still follow the creators in that space and people from like say the Assassin's Creed community and whatever, because I didn't want to lose that that avenue of communication with people who. Who are fair enough. That they may see things one way, I may see it another. But that's kind of the benefit of it. And sometimes we see things a very similar way. But the reason why I didn't do that is so that I could still see what was going on. And I feel like that's important, is that we still see what's going on.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what's going on. I literally blocked everything. I was like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to know about it.
We need to see what's going on, otherwise we're not ill-equipped to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point, and I basically blocked everything out too. It really just, I said this before, I talked about it on streams, it's because I felt so strongly about it that I didn't want to see any of it. Like, I couldn't bear to see a fucking hidden blade or a hood. I mean, Ubisoft can't bear that either, but I couldn't bear to see any of that, because it just made me feel sick.
Boys, we're back.
Amazing. That's brilliant.
So I just blocked all of it out, but I think it is worth having that, reopening that avenue to be able to see what's happening in the industry, because Ubisoft, like it or not, is a huge part of the games industry, and pretending like they just don't exist is not
going to do anything
to us. It's
not good for anybody.
Detrimental to them. It does nothing. It's just petty. It's spiteful. It's unnecessary. It's not constructive at all. So I think it makes way more sense for us to get amongst it and talk about this stuff, but without giving them our money, without promoting their new shit, without talking about them in a positive light. But we can still talk about Ubisoft as a company in the games industry. And we're able to discuss our past and our history. And if somebody wants to jump into or dive into anything related to those old games, I've never really seen a problem there. It's just I've chosen not to, because as of now I'm just not ready. But
no, there will come a time where we might be able to do that, But it's about, I suppose for now, what we're trying to do is just establish that we can't alienate our past. We can't forget that Ubisoft exists. We can't completely block them out of our content creation patterns, and we can't block them out of talking points, because there are sometimes massive talking points, and there are points that only we would make, and people and in the past people have been very appreciative of us doing that, of making those comments, and maybe that's ego talking a little bit, but at the same time I feel like sometimes we give we've had insight on this that people wouldn't have thought about unless they saw us speaking about it. And
we've been
and then-
around this enough for so many years. You know what I mean? We've seen so much history of it that we have a different perspective on it, for just based on how long we've been around it in this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.